It's just after dawn, April 30th, 1943 off the coast of Huelva, Spain. The Atlantic is cold and gray, the kind of water that swallows sound. A fisherman spots something drifting in. A man in a military uniform, face down, pockets heavy, boots still tied. When they pull him ashore, a leather briefcase is chained to his wrist, sealed, official, and impossibly important. Inside, letters marked "Top Secret," whispering that the next Allied invasion will hit Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily. But here's the question: what if this officer was never meant to live at all? To understand why a dead man on a Spanish beach could change the fate of an invasion, you have to step back to the spring of 1943, when the Allies finally had momentum, and Germany knew it. North Africa was slipping out of the Axis grip. The next logical step was the Mediterranean's great locked door, Sicily. From that island, the Allies could threaten Italy itself, force the Luftwaffe to spread thin, and open shipping lanes that had been bleeding for years. But Sicily had one problem. It was obvious. A map could tell you the same story. Sicily sits like a stone between Africa and Europe, too close, too strategic, too predictable. And in war, predictability is deadly. So the British weren't just planning an invasion. They were planning a performance. Because here's the brutal truth of intelligence. You don't need to convince the enemy of the real plan. You only need to convince him of the wrong one long enough for the real plan to arrive with steel and fire. In London, that idea had already been written down years earlier in a deceptively simple concept. If you want to fool the enemy, feed him the kind of information he already wants to believe. Not propaganda, not fantasy. A story that feels true. A story that fits his fears, his assumptions, his ego. And that is where Operation Mincemeat begins, not on the sea, but in the minds of people who understood something most generals hate admitting. Wars are not only won by force, they are won by belief. The core problem wasn't creativity, it was delivery. You can write the perfect fake plan. You can forge the perfect signature. You can stamp most secret across the paper and age it with the right ink. But how do you get it into German hands in a way that looks accidental? Because if the Germans suspect you want them to find it, they won't trust it. So the delivery method had to be something no spy could easily stage. Something nature could plausibly do. Something that creates a chain of custody you can't fully control, because the lack of control is what makes it believable. And that's when someone says the sentence that still sounds insane even now. What if we use a dead body? Think about it. A dead officer doesn't look like a messenger. He looks like a tragedy. He looks like an accident. A plane crash. A maritime patrol gone wrong. A courier lost in bad weather. And if the enemy finds what he carried, it feels like luck. Not a trap. Not a setup. Just fortune. But now the plan has a terrifying dependency. The dead man has to look real. Not just the uniform. Not just the rank. Everything. Because intelligence officers know what most people don't. The easiest way to spot a lie isn't the big details. It's the small ones. The things nobody thinks to fake. 444. So the British begin to build a person. Not a paper identity. A life. They decide he will be an officer. Major William Martin, Royal Marines. A man important enough to carry high-level correspondence, but not so senior that it would be impossible for him to be traveling with documents in the first place. The rank matters. The branch matters. Even his route matters. Then they build his pockets. Because pockets tell stories. They fill them with the quiet clutter of real existence. Keys, receipts, a wallet with signs of use, small slips of paper that mean nothing except that real people accumulate meaningless things. They add private letters. The kind that make an investigator hesitate, because now this isn't just a case file, it's a man. They craft him a fiancée, Pam, because what looks more real than a love story that never got finished? And every item is chosen with the same ruthless principle. If the Germans open that briefcase, they must feel they are reading something they were never supposed to see. But even the best fake life is useless without the most important ingredient. A real death. And here the operation crosses the line between clever and grim, because they need a body with no obvious trauma that would contradict the story. They need someone who could plausibly have died at sea, someone whose condition can support an official narrative. They find him, not a soldier, not a hero, a man on the margins, someone whose death would not trigger headlines, whose absence would not cause a family to come searching through government offices with questions. And now the operation has a second dependency. The dead must remain convincingly dead, not decomposed, not damaged, not obviously handled. So the body is preserved, stored, protected, treated like a classified weapon, because that is what it has become. Now comes the question of geography. Why Spain? Because Spain is neutral on paper, but war has a way of leaking into neutral places. Spain, in 1943, is a corridor of whispers. Diplomats, smugglers, informants, and intelligence officers from every side. German agents move there with relative freedom. British agents watch them. Spanish officials stand between politics and survival. And most importantly, the British know something cold and practical. If a body washes up in the right part of Spain, German intelligence will come looking, not because Germany is omniscient, but because Germany is hungry. Hungry for signs of where the next blow will fall. The British choose Huelva for a reason. It isn't random coastline. It is a place where German eyes already exist, where the probability of the wrong people seeing the wrong documents is high. And still, they can't be certain. That's the point. If it's too perfect, it looks fake. So the plan is designed to feel risky, even to the people running it. Because a believable lie often requires a genuine chance of failure. The final prop is the briefcase. It cannot be tucked in a pocket. It cannot be casually attached. It must look like something a responsible officer would protect with his life. So they chain it to his wrist. A physical chain, simple, brutal, symbolic. This officer died, but he didn't let go. That image alone does half the psychological work. When a fisherman finds him, the chain tells a story before any document is read. This mattered. Now the body has to enter the sea with a clean narrative. A submarine carries him out into the dark water. There are no cameras, no witnesses, just men doing something that feels more like burial than warfare. And then, quietly, they release him, not as a weapon fired, as a secret placed into the current. And the sea does what the sea has always done. It carries stories to shore. When the body is discovered, everything becomes out of British hands. Spanish authorities recover it. An autopsy is performed. Papers are catalogued. Officials argue over procedure. Someone calls someone else. A consulate is notified. And somewhere in that chain of bureaucracy, somewhere between neutrality and opportunity, German intelligence gets its chance. This is the moment that makes Operation Mincemeat either genius or farce. Because there is a difference between getting documents into enemy hands and getting the enemy to believe them. And belief isn't created by stamps. It's created by context. The letters inside the briefcase are written to be read the way a thief reads stolen mail, with the thrill of intrusion. They contain the kind of casual specificity that feels authentic mentions of units, logistics, political sensitivities. They paint Greece and Sardinia not as vague possibilities, but as targets under serious consideration. And Sicily? Sicily is framed as the decoy, not the main event. The documents don't just tell the Germans what the Allies will do. They tell the Germans what the Allies want Germany to think the Allies will do. That layering matters because it flatters the enemy's intelligence. It makes him feel clever for seeing through the supposed decoy. And when you make an opponent feel clever, you make him vulnerable. Now imagine the German side. You are staring at a war map with too many red pins and not enough divisions to cover them all. You know the Allies are coming. You don't know where. Then suddenly, by apparent accident, you receive a set of documents that seem to answer the question. Not through a captured spy, not through a broken code, through chance. A drowned courier, a briefcase chained to a corpse. How do you not at least want to believe it? Because the lie isn't forcing itself on you. It's offering you relief. And relief is dangerous. Relief makes you stop interrogating your assumptions. Relief makes you accept the story that reduces your anxiety. This is the most lethal psychological detail of Operation Mincemeat. It doesn't rely on German stupidity. It relies on German humanity. The desire to solve the puzzle, the desire to be right, the desire to act on information rather than fear. So German planners begin to shift their attention. Greece starts to look like the real prize. Sardinia starts to look like the stepping stone. And Sicily, predictable, obvious Sicily, begins to look like exactly what the British want Germany to guard. A decoy. Here's what makes this moment so cruelly elegant. Even if German officers have doubts, doubt is not enough. Because doubt has to fight momentum. It has to fight the pressure of superiors demanding certainty. It has to fight the institutional instinct to act. And in rigid command structures, once a consideration becomes a plan, the plan begins to feel inevitable. Troops are moved, aircraft are repositioned, resources are allocated, not because every officer is convinced, but because the system demands decision, and a believable lie is not one everyone believes. It's one that moves the machine. Meanwhile, the British watch in a different way. They are not watching beaches, they are watching signals. Because the ultimate proof of deception isn't what you sent. It's what the enemy does after receiving it. And this is where Operation Mincemeat becomes more than theater. It becomes measurable. If the Germans reinforce Greece and Sardinia, the lie is working. If they keep their strength concentrated on Sicily, the lie failed. And the most terrifying part? By the time you know which is true, you might already be too late. So the planners wait. They wait for the sign that the German mind has shifted. They wait for the moment when a corpse on a Spanish beach becomes a decision in a German headquarters. Because if the decision comes, then in a matter of weeks, over the sea, the real invasion will arrive carrying not letters, but soldiers. And the difference between success and catastrophe will not be a tank, not a plane, not even a battleship. It will be whether the enemy believed a story, and whether he moved his forces away from the place where the story was about to become reality, because that is the strange hidden front of war. Sometimes the battle is decided before the first shot is fired. Sometimes it is decided when someone reads a letter and chooses to trust it.